Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are tackling a really fundamental question, one that I think cuts right to the heart of how we think about self-improvement.
Right.
Is true personal growth about just, improving your strengths, doubling down on what you're already good at?
Or is the real path to mastery found somewhere else? Like integrating your exact opposite.
That is the essential tension, yeah. And the sources we've gathered today, they provide a really deep structural answer. We're looking at this complex system that pares down 24 distinct archetypes into 12 essential stable pairings.
The research calls them complete circuits.
And I think it's important to say this isn't like a personality quiz.
No, not at all.
It's much more like an engineering schematic for your own developmental engine. It's all about structure and stability.
And what's critical here is that each of these circuits is defined by two poles. You have the structural pole, that's the part that deals with action, with doing things in the world.
Outward manifestation.
Exactly. And then you have the beauty pole, which is all about the inward meaning, the context, the being.
So our mission for this deep dive is to explore how this really specific model, this idea that wholeness requires a dual archetype.
How it aligns so perfectly with things we already know.
Right, from Jungian psychology, from modern neuroscience, even from, the geometry of mathematics.
And they all point to the same truth. Wholeness isn't in mastering one pole. It's found in the dynamic, stable, the dance between both of them.
Okay, so let's start with that foundational idea, polar integration.
Yeah. The source basically asserts that each of these circuits is a complete unit. If you try to run only half of it, you get inherent instability. It's a structural flaw in the system.
So if I identify really strongly with one half, let's say the structural pole, and I just completely ignore its beauty counterpart, the whole system starts to, break down?
It does, but in very predictable ways. The instability isn't just random chaos. It follows specific patterns that are, they're defined by the very thing that's missing.
Ah, I see. And the sources even list these specific recognizable results.
They do.
So if you're all structure, you risk becoming, rigid, inflexible.
Or mechanically cold. And on the flip side, if you're all beauty and meaning without any structure.
You become chaotic, overly idealistic.
Or even emotionally overloaded. Yeah. What's fascinating is that the problem isn't the pole itself. Structure is necessary, beauty is necessary.
Of course.
The instability only comes from the absence of its stabilizing opposite. An archetype, or a function, standing all by itself it's just incomplete by design.
The design requires an opposite. That immediately makes me think of Carl Jung. I mean, this isn't a new idea.
No, not at all. Jung's entire developmental model insisted that integration is always about the polarity.
That's absolutely right. For Jung, if your dominant function was thinking,
you weren't truly developed until you integrated feeling.
And if you were all intuition,
you had to integrate sensation. The conscious mind had to integrate the shadow. The outward persona had to integrate the soul. I mean, his entire path insisted on integrating the exact opposite force.
So this system, with its 12 complete circuits, is sort of providing an engineering blueprint for what Jung was observing psychologically.
That's a great way to put it. It's saying, here are the 12 required polar opposites that define the human experience. And the proof for this isn't just psychological, it's mathematical.
Okay, so the geometry of the system, which uses ellipse equations, this requires polarity.
It does. Each pair is literally a counter-rotation.
Can you break that down for us? A counter-rotation. If I'm moving toward my goal, how is my opposite helping me if it's rotating away from me?
Okay. Imagine two gears meshing perfectly. One flow bends the entire energetic field in one direction outward toward structure.
Okay.
And the paired flow bends it the opposite way inward toward meaning. That continuous opposing tension is what stabilizes the center point.
Creating what the system calls the harmonic state.
Exactly. So stability isn't a straight line. Stability is the intersection of two perfectly balanced opposing forces.
And if one of those gears stops, the whole engine just starts shaking.
Precisely. One without the other is asymmetry. Two together, in dynamic opposition, create coherence.
And if we shift from abstract math to, hardwired biology, we see this duality mirrored in the brain.
Perfectly. And this is where it gets really interesting because it's not just personality theory anymore. This is fundamental to neural health.
Right. This archetype pairing shows up so clearly in modern neural dynamics.
Think about the two hemispheres of your brain. The left hemisphere. That's your structural pole. It's focused on detail, logic, structure.
Narrow focus.
But it absolutely requires the right hemisphere, which is the context and cutie pole. It provides the holistic view, the global pattern, the emotional meaning.
A surgeon who has perfect technique, that's the left hemisphere, but lacks any compassion or ethical context, they're incomplete.
That is a perfect mirror of the S and B pairing. Structure requires context. But we also see this in functional brain networks, too.
You're talking about the default mode network.
I am, yeah. The DMN, which we associate with introspection, imagination, sense of self, all the being functions, it has to be balanced by the task-positive network.
The TPN, which is all about doing, planning, external focus, reasoning.
Right, and if you spend all your time in the TPN, you get things done, but you lose perspective, you lose meaning.
And if you're always in the DMN, you dream, but you never actually execute anything.
Exactly. Health, according to neuroscience, depends on both of these running simultaneously in a proper dynamic alternation. It's not about one dominating the other.
It's their complementary push and pull.
Which is exactly what these archetypal pairs are designed to represent.
So let's look at the operational mechanism of that dance.
Yeah.
How does the system describe this push and pull in the archetypes themselves?
They're described as moving in opposite seasonal directions, so one is pushing outward toward expansion.
And its partner is pulling inward toward consolidation.
And they're designed to meet right at the center point, which the source calls the observer, the coherent self.
I'm picturing a figure eight, an infinity loop. The two movements are distinct, but they connect at that single, stable intersection.
That's a perfect analogy. Visually, the diagrams in the source show that when you join the two halves of a pair, they form a single breathing loop. It's a dynamic exchange.
And without its partner, the shape is just incomplete, unstable.
But with its partner, it becomes whole. And this really resonates with human experience, right? We shift modes all day, but that shift always passes through that stable center. When we feel out of balance, too rigid or too chaotic, it's because that opposing mode is shut down.
And when both poles activate, you feel what the source calls your full self. You're acting with intention, but also with meaning.
Yes, you're creating structure, but you're also connected to the context of that structure.
Okay, this brings up a critical distinction for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people listening. If we're supposed to be running all 12 pairs, 24 archetypes simultaneously, doesn't that just sound exhausting?
Like extreme multitasking.
Exactly. How is simultaneous activation different from just, rapid switching?
That is the crucial clarification. It is not rapid switching, and it's certainly not multitasking. A whole individual is the pair running simultaneously, but with complementary functions.
Okay, so switching is substitution.
And simultaneity is synthesis.
So what does that synthesis actually look like in action?
Well, it means the two halves are engaged, but they're performing opposite functions that serve a shared goal. So let's say you're a dominant structural type planning a huge project.
Okay.
Your structural half is defining the budget, setting timelines, delegating tasks. But simultaneously, your beauty-oriented partner is evaluating the human cost of that timeline, checking if the project aligns with your long-term values.
And making sure the work is actually meaningful.
Precisely. One half is stabilizing the ship, the other is reading the ethical compass.
You can't budget effectively if you don't know what you value, and you can't enact your values without a budget.
Exactly. One half is interpreting, the other is expressing, one is structuring, the other is opening, which leads to the ultimate conclusion here. The self is not a single archetype. It's not one strength. It is always relational.
The self, then, is the intersection of each dual archetype pair.
That's the coherent, stable point where the counter-rotation stabilizes, allowing for movement without chaos. So the full self is all 12 pairs humming at once in perfect harmonic superposition.
That capacity for complexity is actually what creates stability, not chaos.
Exactly.
Okay, let's make this concrete. We have 12 paired circuits. Let's dive into some specifics.
Let's start with 3 pairs in detail. First up, pair 1, the architect and the curator. Their shared identity is the order keepers.
The architect. That's the sage of form, the one who builds coherence, anchors meaning, and structure.
Yeah.
Very structural.
And the curator is the healer of meaning. They preserve, refine, restore. They see the truth hidden within the detail.
And their polarity is what's crucial.
Right. They both stabilize that difficult transition from winter to spring. But the architect stabilizes from the top down, defining the new structure. The curator stabilizes from the bottom up, maintaining and restoring the valuable tradition that's already there.
So the insight here is, if you're a dominant architect, Integrating the curator lets you shift from being a rigid dictator of rules to a wise steward of tradition.
You move from imposing structure to preserving meaningful structure. That's the functional difference.
Okay, what about pair 3, the visionary and the bard?
They're the creative radiance. They represent the two faces of expression at the peak of energy.
The visionary is the artist of becoming. They see futures, imagine worlds, bloom outward to give creative impulse a structure.
While the bard is the lover of experience. Deep feeling, translating beauty into immediate, intimate connection. They bloom inward.
So if you're only the visionary, you have endless beautiful plans that are sterile. They never connect to human emotion.
And if you're only the bard, you have deep feeling, powerful connection, but no direction, no framework to actually make anything real.
Integration means your visions gain heart and your emotions gain form.
Precisely.
Let's do one more in detail. Pair 11, the alchemist and the explorer, the boundary crossers.
Their polarity here is internal transmutation versus external discovery. The alchemist is the inner transformer, collapsing inward to turn chaos into clarity.
Integrating the shadow.
Yes. While the explorer is the networker, expanding outward to map possibility to discover new structures in the external world.
So they both operate during times of big change.
They do. The alchemist renovates the internal house. The explorer maps the external world for new blueprints. An explorer who integrates the alchemist stops chasing novelty for its own sake.
And instead brings deep, reflective meaning back from their journey.
And an alchemist who integrates the explorer knows that internal transformation has to be tested out in the real world, that reciprocity is key.
That helps immensely. Now, for the remaining 9 pairs, we probably shouldn't just list them. Maybe we can group them thematically.
Good idea. We can group them by function. Let's start with the pairs focused on, say, knowledge and strategy.
Okay, that would be pair 7, the analyst and the archivist, the knowledge keepers. Dissecting and learning versus preserving in memory.
And pair 5, the engineer and the strategist, the system makers, building upward versus anticipating downward flows of intelligence.
Then what about the pairs focused on law and principles?
That would be pair 2, the headmaster and the scribe, who are the law translators.
Crystallizing principles versus dispersing them.
And pair 6, the judge and the ambassador, the mediators of truth, balancing collapsing radiance into law versus softening rigidity into connection.
Okay, next up, the pairs centered on regeneration and inner depth.
Here we have pair 8, the therapist and the gardener, the regenerators, lifting inner density to meaning versus lifting outer density to growth.
And pair 4, the empath and the dreamer, the intuitive depths.
Yeah, balancing emotional truth toward definition versus dissolving structure into possibility.
And finally, the pairs dealing with creative flux and transcendence.
That's pair 9, the composer and the innovator, the creative strategists. One stabilizes, the other disrupts to find better solutions.
And pair 10, the prophet and the muse, the symbolic radiance.
Converting beauty into principle versus beauty into relationship.
Which leaves us with the last one, pair 12, the mystic and the firefly.
The luminal pair. A balance of descending into inner truth versus ascending into outward radiance. And that's the full spectrum, 12 essential dual archetype circuits.
All required for a complete, stable human being.
And if we synthesize all of this, the simple takeaway, confirmed by math, by neurology, by psychology, is that health equals balanced polarity.
Complexity isn't chaos.
Not at all. It's a finely tuned, counter-rotating set of forces working together. If you feel stuck, whether in rigidity or in meaninglessness, it's a signal. Your dominant mode is running alone.
So what does this all mean for you, for your path forward? If the self is that intersection of opposite movements, the goal isn't to fix your strengths.
It's to stabilize them with their opposite. If you're an alchemist, focused intensely on internal reflection, maybe try engaging the explorer in just one small external action today.
Seek one new connection or map one new piece of information.
And if you're a visionary, always chasing sterile plans, take one moment to engage the bard. Connect that plan to the emotional reality of one person who will be affected by it.
So the real question is your focus too much on the single pole and not enough on the dynamic tension of the dance?
Because that's the space where true, effortless wholeness resides. Find your balance. Find your circuit.
We'll see you next time for the next deep dive.